Hello again everyone, and I'm here again with the next video on my request list, which was a numerology profile of Charles Dickens, or should I say Charles John Huffam Higgins. Now, my knowledge of Charles Dickens is I know the names of some books that he wrote, and I have to admit I've never read a Charles Dickens book in my life. I may have seen films in the past that are adaptations of his book, but unfortunately, British I know, but not really into British literary people. So it's not really, Charles Dickens is not really someone I know a lot about, although I say that in every video. It's but do you know what? I like that because I like it to be about the numbers and not about any preconceived knowledge. So preconceived knowledge consists of that he's written a few books and he's a classic. In the UK, it's a big thing. Charles Dickens is a big classical writer that is studied by academia and read by those that are cultural and like to read that kind of thing. Fiction's never been something I've been interested in. It was more about the spiritual and numerology, which I've been obsessed with since young, and the tarot and, spiritual wisdom. So less about the fiction. However, fiction holds within it a lot of, I don't know, concepts, parables, situations that can teach people better decisions or show of an experience that, on some levels teaches the reader what is positive and what will bring them good things or positive things and what may not be so good. There's normally a moral to a lot of stories. So, and the reason why I'm going into this is if you look at the chart of Charles Dickens, you'll see that his purpose is life path 1, 2, 3, which you would expect, and we'll go into that in a minute. But he has a birthday number 7, which means the 7 is all about spiritual wisdom and intuition and learning by life experiences and building your intuitive voice via experience. So in the 1, 2, 3, he's obviously here to be creative, verbal or written, and improve or change the emotions of others with his creativity. Now, 1, 2, 3 is kind of the performer kind of number. So it could be an actor, singer, speaker. It could be anyone that expresses themselves creatively to audiences. Now, Charles Dickens chose his medium to be the books that he's written. And I have absolutely no doubt that the books he writes alters your emotional state. Otherwise, he wouldn't be the famous author and the classic in the UK that he is. So again, another person who is influential for the way he walked his life path and how he was able to be successful in his life path. Now, he may have had previous lives where he wasn't so successful. So he's got to a point now where in this lifetime, he was very successful, influential and well known for the fact that he's walked his path in such a creative way, which has altered the emotional state of audiences across the world, as not just the UK. It's very famous, Charles Dickens. He's global. And of course, the 1, 2 says, he serves others and he's very innovative with his stories. And his stories, his books, they really serve other people. And the birthday number 7 says, bring in some kind of wisdom, some kind of knowledge or concept. Hence why I started the video the way I did. I've never read a Dickens book, but his numbers tell me that his stories contain life experience concepts, or parables, if you will, that you can use and learn by without actually having to go through it. So his numbers show me that he's very much about not just entertaining and inspiring his audience, but also teaching them valuable life lessons using his wisdom. As an expression, a talented number 8, he's good at creating and manifesting financial abundance. So with his influence, he would have created money and affluence and the ability to be comfortable and personally free. And he would have managed his money really well and used it as a tool to help others. He wouldn't as a talented 8, he wouldn't have used his money to buy, fancy things or status symbols or look at me, aren't I the best and more powerful than Yao. No, he's more about using the abundance that he's built as a tool to help others. And as a 178, a very intuitive decision maker, able to help others intuitively and know who to help, who to give your abundance to as a tool to help, and who maybe doesn't deserve it so much. Very intuitive, which matches with the 7 birthday number. So there's some 7 ability already there. So I see him as in the 3 as a creator, a communicator that is an emotional, passionate creator who alters the emotional state of others. But within his stories, his number shows me that he embeds wisdom and life experience and concept that would be good for people to learn embedded in his stories. That's how we could put those 2 numbers together. Whether there are parables and concepts in his stories, I actually don't know without reading. And again, you can comment on this video and tell me if you know more about Charles Dickens than I do. Talented at creating abundance and manifesting the abundance he needs, as well as abundance he can use to help others. And of course, what really helped him to walk his life path to 123 was his soul urge 213. Now, the only difference between these 2 numbers is that the soul urge 3 is much more innovative, more likely to channel and be the author of his own ideas and concepts. So his soul urge really drove him to write those innovative stories and books that nobody else had read or touched on in order to make him the person he is. So his motivation really drove him to walk his life path. And of course, he's maturing towards a global illuminator, the Master 11. The Master 11 is all about creating world healing and getting their ideas out around the world. And he's matured from an expression 8 that is abundant and good at building abundant towards a person that has the talent to have that global focus to which he has had. And I have no doubt that he has created a lot of warmth and nurture and well-being through his stories. Personality wise, people see him as very social, very much the communicator. He came across to others as a technical communicator, both verbally and written form. He was always chatty, always communicating in some way. In some ways quite scattered and rebellious in a lot of ways. And the three helps that, because the 3 can be quite spontaneous and scattered. Remember, he's a 2-3-5 personality. But they're very much about the social, communicating with others. The 2-3 really makes him about wanting to perform and inspire others, but also build closer relationships with others and communicate to others, to inspire them and to do amazing things in their life. So his personality, he comes across to others as very much the social communicator, whether he does it verbally or in written form. He comes across to others socially in that way as well. So it's like he puts his social skills into his books when he writes these stories that I have yet to read. He has a lot of life experience in his past, an old soul, because you see all those intensifiers he has there. He's intensifier in the 1, which makes him an innovative leader. He has an intensifier in the 3, which really helps his life path when it comes to communicating with audiences and being able to inspire the masses. He has an intensifier in the 4, which means he's good at creating his own stability, his own business, his own you know, he doesn't need somebody else to create his stability and safety for him. Very organised, very goal-centred. And that would have really helped him when it comes to getting his books done and getting them written and getting them out there. He's also an intensifier in the 6, which is a very nurturing, family-driven number. So there's a good chance that he had a nurturing family, even though his 3 tendencies and his 7 birthday may have taken him away from family a lot. He has a 6 intensifier, which gives him the underlying ability from previous lives to nurture a family in peace and stability. But as it's an intensifier and not the more influential numbers in his life, he may or may not have expressed this 6 in this lifetime, keeping in mind that I know nothing of his family background. And of course, the 8 is also an intensifier for him. So he is an expression number 8, a fixed talent in the 8, and he's been an 8 before in a previous life. So he always had that ability, very strong ability, to create abundance, to manifest positive abundance, and then use his power, status, and abundance as a tool to help other people. The only karmic energy that he hasn't really got so much experience in is the 9 energy, which is all about being like an influencer of others, more spiritual, almost like a guide or an influencer of others. He's really influencing people in many ways by working on the 3 energy. So, even though the 9 doesn't exist anywhere else in his chart and it exists as a karmic number, there's a good potential that he will develop this number in this lifetime, but he just has to make sure that he's always ethical and responsible with what he communicates to others, how he comes across, so that he's always authentic, that people always know the real him, and that he has positive intention towards others. Now his 8 intensifier will really help that. So that was a brush over of all of his numbers. So life path 3, most important number in Charles Dickens's chart. He was here to learn, to master, balance and control his emotions and of course the emotions of others, to enable him to perform creatively, artistically, manifest joy and enlightenment and inspiration, and even inspire action in others, to bravely and intuitively take risks in expressing himself and his ideas with his words or his creative artistry. But Charles Dickens would have chosen his words, although again he may have been an artist behind closed doors. Again, it's not something I know anything about. But when it comes to his success in the world, as we know, he can express himself, or he did as part of his life path, express himself with his words, not always verbally, because I don't know if he did any speeches or taught anyone in person or did any stage work, which I doubt. It was mostly with his written word, which is fine. It's still creative communication, and we choose how we specifically and the actions we take specifically to walk our creative paths, because this is all big picture concepts and it's up to us to choose the specifics. And of course he chose his writing, his fiction writing, and it did inform and delight audiences and social groups. He had to learn to be confident enough, social butterfly-y enough, the life of the party, able to communicate, network, promote his book, and have that business. It's going to be quite entrepreneurial, the money he made from his books, snapping up opportunities to promote himself in his book as he arises. And of course his the fact that we all, he's a top author, a classical author that, we all study into academia, shows that he was very much able to promote himself. And of course, his stories and his books spoke for themselves when they went out into the arena of the world. So as a 3, he had to develop positive verbal expression to make others feel good. Now, it wasn't so much necessarily verbal. I don't know how he spoke to others, but he did it with written word, because he may have had difficulties when he was younger with shyness. He may have struggled to socialise with others or say what he needed to say, and that can be due to shyness, or maybe he had language delay, or maybe his self-esteem caused him to have a language delay. Maybe there were language barriers, maybe he struggled emotionally and had maybe a stutter, or maybe he was mute when he was younger, but he would have had difficulties when it comes to his social communication, development when he was younger. And he very much obviously expressed that in his books. He's here to be creative, artistic, and make others feel good with not only his words, verbally, written, and with his creativity. And boy, did he do that. I mean, he could have had low confidence. He could have procrastinated. He could have not acted at all or written any books, or, he could have not inspired anyone. Maybe he wouldn't have felt confident enough. But I guess the other numbers in his chart really helped him, especially his actually I've forgotten what that number is, but it is another strong 3 in his chart. I think it's an intensifier. And his soul urge number that really helped develop his 3. That's why I say it's often good to have the same soul urge number as your life path number, because it really drives you to want to walk your life path. But it also means that you might struggle a little bit to be happy, because your life path is the challenge and your heart wants that challenge. So it's sort of a double-edged sword. You're motivated to achieve it, but it might take a while before you achieve that fulfillment, because your life path number is a lifelong thing. But I guess as long as you keep in mind that you're walking that path and you can't achieve it straight away, all will be well. So creative, artistic, verbal, to improve the emotions of others, to inspire, to delight, to inform as well, and bring the wisdom of the 7, which we're going to come on to be dynamic, to have the courage to take those calculated and intuitive risks, to progress his books and his authorship, because he could have been fearful, unable to leave his comfort zone, thus unable to even put his books out there. But he clearly got past that difficulty, that shyness in communication, that low confidence, that tendency to procrastinate or working consistently or retreat into his shell. And he would have struggled at first, not only socially and being the centre of attention socially, but also enjoying the limelight of an audience, which is something a 3 needs to develop towards. Because remember, 3s are creative performers and they inspire audiences. So they've got to really learn to be able to stand up in front of groups, stand up in front of people, or put their creativity out to audiences and allow themselves to be the centre of attention, so that people can experience their creativity. He could have hid in the background. He could have been so scared and fearful of being noticed or speaking in public or putting his books out there. That could have really stopped him if he had allowed it. And again, it's a mark of a very influential person when they can not only get past their difficulties in this lifetime, but actually excel in this energy in this lifetime, to the point where it almost becomes a talent that you're expressing, not a challenge that you've had to achieve. Not to say that you won't have any challenge all the way along the way, but it's almost like self-actualizing in that energy, not just achieving in it, but excelling in it. And that is what helps people around the world to be as influential and successful as they are. So he had to learn to enjoy the limelight of the audience as he got more well known, and being the centre of attention. Sometimes he might have done book launches and signings, he might have been asked to do speeches, I don't know, but it's likely, especially when you're that well known. He had to be a doer and an executor of ideas, getting those words down. I mean, he could have been lazy and done nothing and thought about doing it but not actually done it, but he did. Again, another issue that he fought past. Now again, I don't know how long a lot of this took him. I don't know how old he was when he wrote what he wrote, but he still walked his path and gotten past his difficulties and been able to excel in the 3 energy. He's here to be responsible for himself and the consequences of his actions. Well, as far as I know, none of his books have led people towards irresponsibility. But, I'm always open to being given new information if that exists and I am ignorant of it. So he was responsible for himself, I hope, in his life, and responsible for the consequences of his actions. And I hope he was responsible in making sure that the words he wrote on paper didn't cause any issues around other people. And to this day, all it does is create positivity. And like I said, it's something that we study and learn by, not something that is controversial or is known, as far as I know, to cause issues or be irresponsible in anyone else's life. But again, enlighten me if you know different. because he could be totally irresponsible and unable to take responsibility for the consequences of his stories and his actions, and the influence that his books or his actions may have had on other people. Hopefully he was the responsible type and he really thought before he acted. Socially, of course, he is here to lift people off. Oh, that's the three. Now, there he would have had a tendency to be very good in arguments. Negative emotional expression wouldn't have been something he would have shied away from. Being a 7 birthday as well, there can be some deep emotion that either gets hidden away or expressed explosively. But as you know, emotion can only be held back for so long. And, there are probably times in Charles Dickens' life where he has stayed aloof and held his emotions in, and times where he has burst like a balloon and expressed himself very emotionally to people around him. Because both the 3 and the 7 give him a need to work with his emotions. So again, I don't know nothing about his emotional life, but what he could have done is this emotional expression that is a big part of who he is what he did was he infused that into his stories so that he could really infuse that emotion into his audience. And over time, hopefully, he expressed that emotion through his stories and not holding it back or allowing it to explode at the most inopportune moments. So very important it was for Charles Dickens to express his emotions authentically so that they come out positively with thought and not negatively and destroying other people inside. He's here to be interdependent, engage in tasks that built his independence, but also his interdependence, because often 3s can work quite inconsistently and they kind of like being looked after by others. So sometimes they can become dependent on other people so that they can do their own creative thing. But then it gets to a point where they have to develop their own independence, and boy did he do that. I mean, financially independent, a go-go. Whether he was emotionally independent with people he knew that were close to him, I don't know, because he did have a bit of a tendency towards dependence of those around him. He may have worked a bit inconsistently because 3s don't really like routine and commitment and everyday tasks. And, as I said right at the beginning, he's here to be the social, upfront, talkative life of the party. But especially in his early life, he may have struggled with his social skills and it was all to do with his social anxiety or lack of social confidence and maybe some difficulties with his communication, especially early in life, and maybe even as he developed through his life. But he was able to communicate in many other ways. And because of his influence, it would have given him a lot of opportunity and to throw him into social situations, whether he found them comfortable or not. It's all lessons, it's all learning, it's all experience for him to be able to be that more socially confident kind of person. And that was just part of his path to develop in this lifetime, as well as his emotions and his interdependence and his emotional expression and everything I've just said. So finally, he's here to learn to have the social confidence to see an opportunity, network and jump on it, snapping up opportunities as they arise, networking with the right people, not allowing yourself to be quiet, avoidant of social situations, shy, underconfident, bit of a procrastinator. He clearly didn't do any of this because it didn't hold back his success in the world and the fact that he did inspire, inform and delight his audiences. Now he's a 1, 2, 3. Not, what I was just saying was about his path in the 3. But because it's the most significant sub-lesson, I'm going to look into this 2 in his 1, 2, 3 life path. So to be the best 3 he could be in this lifetime, he needed to serve, to be a 3 in service, cooperation, teamwork, looking after others, developing excellent social skills, being a mediator, advisor, gentle counsellor, someone that was good around people he knew to pull them close. And that was a major sub-lesson. The 3 is about having that performance, distance, and expressing yourself emotionally to audiences. But the 2 says that there's got to be some deeper development there into key people into his life, those that he intuitively trusts, so that he could build relationships, close friends, close family in his life, but also be innovative about it. And we all know that his ideas were very innovative. So first of all, the most important sub-lesson is that 2, but also it's also the one as well about being confident and independent to express his unique ideas and stories, which of course he did. If you're a life path 1, 2, 3, which he is, he's here to work with any issues or difficulties around his self-expression. Like I said, there may have been some difficulties in his early life with his self-expression and his emotional sensitivity. He may have been quite reactionary, cry easily, laugh easily, get angry easily, and it's all, his life was really much about calming those emotions and then funneling those emotions through the stories that he wrote. He needed to learn to express himself with his words or his art or his words verbally to inspire, inform and delight his audiences. Tick. To do this, he had to work alongside others. I don't know how, whether he did work alongside others or at least consult others for support, whilst having the confidence and independence to be uniquely creative. We certainly know he did that. What I don't know is whether he kept people at a performance distance all of the time, or that he was able to honour the 2 energy and pull people close. Because as a 1, 2, 3 energy at its best, he would have been positive, which enabled him to confidently, it's intuitive confidence. You know what you're going to do is going to help others and inspire others. So your energy is positive and joyful, and that enables you to confidently express yourself with heartfelt emotion and passion to socially or public speaking, acting, art, in the written word, as Charles did, or even with the physical arts. A lot of 3s inspire people through dance or acting or film. He does it through books. It's just another creative way to inspire your audience. So at his best, he was positive. He confidently expressed himself with heartfelt emotion and passion, whether he was public speaking or writing his books. Socially communicative, charismatic, life of the party, able to socialise, have fun, network, pick up opportunities and work alongside others with an attitude of teamwork and service and joy. That would have been him at his best. I don't know him close enough to know whether he was like that or is like that. I don't know. So, birthday number 7. Now, this is the major sub-lesson. So he's here to be all I just said in the 3, okay? But a major sub-lesson of his 3, of what he needs to inspire, inform and delight his audience with, would have been his wisdom, his spirituality, his trust in his intuition and the spiritual wisdom that may not be something that the world may have pushed to him. He trusted that the universe was like it was, and that he was he's here to be spiritual and share that wisdom with others, which makes me feel that as a 3, he could infuse a lot of wisdom and life concepts throughout his stories in order to develop people's soul, as well as just inspiring them or informing them emotionally. There's an extra responsibility there to almost develop people's soul with his creative artistry, to help them prioritise their inner development. How might I have dealt with the situation that the character in that book dealt with? And it prompts you to discover this in yourself, to get involved in your own self-discovery. How would I have acted in that situation? Is there a better way of doing it? Do I agree with the moral of the story, or is it something I don't agree with? You're here to be a researcher. So he was here to look into, deeper theories. Look beyond the veil a bit and look to ideas that the paradigm might not be pushing. So there would have been a good chance, I've never read any of his books, by the way, that there'd have been a lot of, spirituality, or at least deep concepts behind his books, life lessons, if you will, that would have really encompassed the 7 in his life purpose. He would have balanced worldly logic, he would have researched in the world, but fundamentally his final decision on what he wrote or how he came across or what he taught others was his own intuitive wisdom. That's the 7 in him, and he was just sometimes struggled to focus. I mean, he was a life path 3, they struggled to focus. And 7s, they like to look at all kinds of wisdom and study everything. They're very much hungry for spirituality, and it could exacerbate Charles Dickens's scatteredness sometimes. He might have felt unfocused a lot. So when he was writing his books, he really needed to focus on one theory, concept or idea at a time and base his story or his ending on that life-changing concept or, life lesson, that he could focus on that life lesson so that he could, more effectively blend that into the moral and the story of his books. So it was important for him to focus on maybe 1 or 2 at a time of the wisdom and the knowledge that he channeled from himself and the higher realms to be able to infuse that through his books so that when people finish reading his books, they not only feel entertained and inspired, but they feel that they've learned something in here, in their soul. And I hope that's how Charles Dickens' books comes across to people. And it's got to be quite deep and good for him to be so famous. But again, embarrassingly, I've never read any of his books. And never really studied him, even though I went to a British school. There's so many authors we study in British schools, and Charles Dickens wasn't one of them, really. It was more Shakespeare and Chaucer and other authors. Anyway, moving on. So socially in the 7, he was here to be a bit of a free thinker. So he was here to go outside convention. So he wouldn't have told conventional stories. It would have been stories that maybe even the system may not have wanted to promote. Ideas and concepts that the system may not have wanted him to illuminate to the world. But he was a free thinker. Popular culture didn't stir him. He was more about leading and being his own way, learning his own wisdom and living his life his own way. And, that would have helped him very much when it comes to out of the box thinking when it came to his storytelling. He wasn't afraid to think outside the box or even go against convention, look beyond the veil and look deeper towards the truth of situations and then express that in his writing, because he could have been quite disconnected with the interests and attitudes of the masses. He could have wanted to just stay on his own, especially with the social anxiety and the 3. He could have chosen to just go and be like a hermit, stay on his own, be emotionally disconnected from others and isolated himself really beyond what is healthy. And I hope in his personal life he didn't do that. But of course, he was very influential and everyone knew who he was. So he was a free thinker, but he was very connected to the masses with his books. And like in the 3, he had to reconcile deep emotions. The 3 struggles with their emotions and the 7 sort of exacerbates that. So he needed, with his book writing, and I'm hoping this happened, that he reconciled his own emotions and feelings through his storytelling, which helped him to balance his own emotional reactions and think, how is the best way for this character to emotionally react, and what might happen if the character reacts in a negative emotional way, and to really come to terms with how we affect each other with our emotions. And his books, I hope, would have helped him to do that on a big level, because it would have caused him to really analyse how the characters interacted with each other and how they responded emotionally to each other. And again, he could blend that through his books, and that would have taught him a lot. But His social anxiety and his tendency in the seven may have pushed him to want to spend more time on his own than was healthy, and that authors do tend to like to spend time on their own so that they can write. So there may have been times where Charles Dickens spent a little bit too much time on his own, and he really needed to take that time out to socialise and connect with others around him so that he didn't get into emotional difficulties. But the circumstances of his life, his social anxiety, his tendency in the seven to isolate could have pushed him, if he wasn't careful, to over-isolate himself from the people around him. And that really isn't his path. Remember, he's here to get up on that stage and into those social groups and inspire people, not just verbally, but, with his creative artistry and, of course, with his books. So isolating himself too much from people, wouldn't have been a good thing. But you may tell me that in his life he did have bouts where he did isolate himself. I don't know. Maybe if you know more than me, you could let me know. Expression number 8, though. So we've looked at his life purpose. He was here to express himself and alter the emotional state of others. But then he brought with him a toolbox, and that was the talent in the 8. And the expression number 8, and it had no sub-lessons, so just expression number 8, was the strongest and most influential fixed talent energy that he had. And it was up to him to use this ability to help him achieve his life purpose that I've been going on about for the last 35 minutes. So talent-wise, he naturally used his spiritual intuitive potential to be a successful manifester in the world, to make money, to inspire others, naturally talented at understanding the secrets of business and worldly financial abundance, making money, and then using his power, success and status as a tool to not only help him achieve his own personal freedom, but to use it as a tool to help others around him to be successful or feel supported. He was good at using his financial abundance as a tool to help others achieve the same financial success and the same support, to give others a leg up that he already has. Have a healthy attitude towards the energy of money, which more and more would have drawn financial abundance towards him. He was a talented practical business person with a healthy work-life balance, including for himself, his close relationships in his family, and for those in business, those he know that he might want to help or invest in to help them to be successful. He would have been a good, naturally talented investor, good with finances, good with numbers. He would have been probably good at maths and money management and finance and business, maybe even computing and technical stuff. The 8 talent is very practical and business-like and able to make things happen in this world. Balanced determination to achieve, always looking at his ethics and making sure he's responsible with his stories, which is really good because communicators can really influence people into positive action or into negative action. And he's a karmic 9, so he has to take extra care with his ethics and his integrity and always ensure that he is working for the positive, authentic well-being of those around him, that his actions doesn't affect anyone negatively. So ethics and responsibility are very important, especially to a spontaneous, sometimes irresponsible 3, a 7 that isn't really interested or focused on responsibility, and a karmic 9, which says that sometimes he may fail to look into his ethics. So the talent in the 8 can really help that. So ethics, integrity and responsibility for the good of others would have been extra good for him to have as a talent, because it will help his karmic 9 energy. He had the inner confidence and the balanced personal power and charisma, an intuitive trust in himself, which means he was able to sidestep all the social anxiety, all the shyness, all the potential lack of confidence that he could have had. He really used his talent in the 8 energy to have that inner confidence and balanced personal power, so that he had the charisma to communicate and trust himself to do just that. He was a world-class leader. with subject competence. He knew what he was writing about. Excellent social skills, which is really good. As you know, he needed to develop that. Intuitive self-trust that manifests charisma, which he needs as a performer, communicator to others. And the expression number 8 is notoriously good at standing on stages and communicating to their people. So this talent in the 8 would have really helped him to get away from any potential social anxiety or inability to express his true self or get out there socially with others. The 8 would have really helped him to get out there, communicate and be a world-class leader, be an organised manager, make things happen, achieve his worldly goals. And, he was able to be tough, worldly, strong, resilient, disciplined, just like an 8. Realistic, but you can be unrealistic with your storytelling or realistic. Depends on the sort of stories he wrote. Able to cope with the ups and downs of the world. The 3 can be very emotional and sometimes very depressive and up and down, but his 8 talent energy really helps him to have that resilience and strength to help him cope with the ups and downs of the world. But sometimes he may have struggled. We're not all perfect all the time. He was brave. He had the courage to take intuitive risks to progress as an 8, and of course he achieved that success. So again, he used his toolbox 8 very well to help him progress his 3 life path and his 7 birthday number. And as an expression 178, he best expressed the talents of his 8 energy by, I hope, leading a spiritual life, trusting his own soul's wisdom, researching beyond the veil, the spiritual knowledge, and then filtering that through his intuitive voice within to have inner knowledge and truth within him and acknowledge that wisdom and truth within him that he could then impart to other people through his work. His decisions are led by his own inner compass, because he knows and trusts that his experienced soul already knows what's best, that his connection to soul and spirit and his guides already knows what's best, and that gave him a real base of confidence. And he channel and manifest new, unique, groundbreaking ideas with confidence, independence. And he created a lot of change in a lot of people, I would assume, from the books he wrote. And again, he wouldn't have been the star, the influencer that he is if his stories didn't create that within people, and if they weren't innovative and got people's attention. Soul urge number 3 really helps. He's got a soul urge 213, and that means his heart was really driven to do what he did, to express himself to audiences creatively, verbally or in written form. He wanted to be joyful. He wanted to express himself with great skill, verbally and in written form, and with his creative artistry to inspire, inform and delight his audiences. It was something he was already driven to do. He wanted to inspire social groups. He very much did enjoy the attention and limelight of an audience on social group, and he was driven to monitor, reflect and understand his own emotions, which he could use in his books, and his emotional reactions, which again you can use as all information to help you when you're writing a book with complex characters within it. You love and dream of, you always wanted to work for yourself as an entrepreneur who was able to confidently promote, network and make money creatively, which is what he did. He was able to follow his heart and be creative and be an entrepreneur through his creativity. Tick. He was a motivated doer, creative expresser of ideas, spontaneous, I hope, dynamic. He loved to take exciting risks. Maybe he put a lot of that risk and adventure and excitement into his stories. Enjoying flexibility in his schedule. Writers like to spend the time, when they feel at their best to write, and writer's block and all that. Sometimes his emotional state may have sometimes got in the way, and he would have needed to G up his emotional state sometimes in order to be able to sit down behind his typewriter or with his pen in his hand, however he did it, and continue to write and create and channel his creative ideas. He cared about the impact of his stories and his actions on others. He wanted to be responsibility in his storytelling with the books that he wrote. He liked to be opportunistic and spontaneous and dynamic. He thrived on thinking on his feet, snapping up opportunities as they arose, and he wanted to be more socially confident and get out there and communicate, which is great because he really needed that. He really needed to develop that. So I'm so glad that his soul drove him to do that, because it really supported his life path 3. He cares about the impact of his actions, and he tried all the time to be interdependent, to express healthy independence and healthy dependence, giving and receiving in equal measure. He would have wanted and supported his life path by doing that. Because if you're a soul urge 213, going a bit more specific, your motivation, or his motivation to support his life path, is creative self-expression with emotional sensitivity to inspire, inform and delight. Express yourself with your words or your art to inspire your audience in the 3. But in the 1, most specifically, he wanted to do that by channeling and expressing and initiating and writing his own unique ideas and stories with intuitive confidence and courageous intuitive risk-taking to bring emotional change in others with his stories. And he very much had a great ability to channel new ideas and new stories and express those in his books to his audience. He was able to stay focused into the planning and team building stage of getting his book out there and promoting it, using his family for support and supporting his family back. He was able to plan and take his idea to the manifestation, the printing and getting out there stage, and serving and working skillfully alongside the people that were there to help him, and he was supporting too. It's a very innovative first kind of soul urge, and serving others second. So he wanted to express himself to audiences innovatively to bring change that served other people as a 213. His life paths, the sub-lessons are the other way around, but the differences are only very subtle, and the soul urge number will still greatly support the achievement of his life path. And of course, to add to the talent that he already has in the 8, which is already good in business and goal achievement and making things happen and creating abundance, he also developed by his mid-30s, early 40s, into a master 11, an illuminator, somebody that brings and channels new ideas and messages to a world audience. And boy, didn't he mature to do that, because as a master 11 to maturity, he developed the talents of an old soul from his mid-30s onwards. Highly intuitive, empathic, maybe even perceptive and psychic. He saw his uniqueness and his ideas as a gift, and double the talent for channeling, initiating and confidently expressing his new ideas and his messages that he wanted to illuminate the world with. So this gives him added ability to put wisdom and life knowledge in through his books. So again, like his path in the 7, it's not just about delighting and entertaining, it's also about developing the soul and healing the soul of his audience with his creative artistry. So he became, as he aged, much more gentle, more of a healer, and really wanted his stories to illuminate and manifest in the world, to raise the world's vibration and bring world healing. He developed towards being from a world-class business leader to also being a creative, nurturing, gentle leader, healer with a keen sense of interdependence and gentleness around others. He naturally knew that we're not all separate beings. We need to look after everyone. We need to have a global consciousness. We're all one energetic energy, and we need to heal each other and the world. And he really developed that throughout his lifetime. What you do to one, he knew, you do to the whole. And he knew that his stories had to illuminate in a way that spiraled out or rippled out towards positive world healing, soul evolution, learning through reading, developing yourself and your spirituality through reading his concepts, his spiritual wisdom, and looking beneath the surface at the wisdom beneath. So that was very much what he developed towards. So he was already a talented 8, and on top of that, he put on the master 11, and he's also got a big handful of intensifiers from previous lifetimes that also add to his bag of tricks. Very, very talented, experienced man. Personality wise, people saw him as a social person. He may have had a bit of social anxiety throughout his life, but people saw him as a social genius, someone that could express to audiences and develop his relationships. As a 6, as a 5 personality, he sees others, others see him, as someone that engaged in varied experience, very adventurous, but he's always looking for that passion, that focus that he can then create into a mastery or a specialism that he could focus on with discipline to create personal freedom, i.e. his stories and his passion and his mastery for creating fiction that he did develop personal freedom from. And he came across to others as that way, and of course he expressed in that way. He was seen as skillful by others, fearless communicator. So others see him as socially confident, even if he didn't always feel it inside. He was always a fearless communicator to others. He was always seen by others as charismatic in his social engagements and fearless in the way he expressed himself to others. And people saw that in him. He expressed his passion in his mastery and his emotional creativity, and he inspired and informed and delighted audiences, and that's how he came across to others, and that's exactly what he did. Because your personality number is like your social front. It's not always how you really feel inside. So even though he may have felt a bit of social anxiety throughout his time and wanting to pull himself away a lot from people, actually people saw him as very much a social communicator. So he may not have felt this social and outward inside, but he would have more so as he got older. But people always saw him as social, communicative. And of course, that's going to help him because people are still, whether he feels it or not, are connecting with him so that they will listen to every word he said. Because really, the 235, the energy that he comes across to others, he comes across as a performer, a communicator, a fearless communicator at that. And it's good that other people saw him like that, because then they were more likely to want to read his books and give him the opportunities that he so clearly had to promote his books and become as famous as he is. But look at all, though, just to add to the 8 talent that is fixed, the developing talent that became fixed within him, the 8 and the 11. He also had the 1, which is innovative, the 3, which is an emotional genius and makes his life path easier, the 4, which helped him bring stability into his life. He had the talents of a 6, so he was able to promote peace and stability, and able in previous lives to be that family man and the idealistic nurturer. I don't know if he developed a family in this lifetime, but he had been that way in the past. And of course he has innate abilities in the 8 already, so he brought the 8 energy as his expression number, but he had 8 abilities in his past. He's been an 8 before, so the fact that he was able to create such financial abundance and emotional abundance was something that he had a strong talent in. But because he had a karmic 9, it was really important that he communicated and influenced authentically with positive, authentic intention to help others, because a weak 9 can lead people to utmost well-being, or they can lead them off the edge of a cliff. But his 8 intensifier and 8 expression would have helped him with his ethics to really support his difficulty in the 9, so that the stories he communicated and things he did in his life were ethical, and that was extra important from him. And luckily he brought that talent with him. So Charles Dickens' chart, here to be creative, inspire audiences, tick. Here to put wisdom and knowledge and life learning throughout his stories. Maybe a tick, I don't know. Talented at creating abundance and managing that abundance. Passionate about communicating to his audience innovatively in order to inspire and delight people emotionally. A developing talent which was a world illuminator, which really helped him to be able to spread his fiction and his beautiful creativity throughout the world, that is still so important now in British culture. And whether he felt socially confident or not, or whether he always wanted to be social, he was always seen by others as an excellent communicator, and talented socially, even if he didn't always feel it inside. He had a long line of intensifiers, so he is very multi-talented, very multi-skilled. And the only karmic energy he had was the 9. And there's, his 8 talent and his 8 intensifier will really help him there. And, with his ethical communication so far, he has been ethical and he has created a lot of well-being in others. So I have no doubt that he has made big progress in that karmic 9 energy in this lifetime as well. So I hope you've enjoyed listening to my video today, and just before I go, I just want to let you know some exciting news. My beginner book, Remember Your Life Plan, has just been released on Amazon, and this gives you a basic grounding in numerology. It's for beginners and people that are just starting out, and it's good for you to read this before you read my other books. So Remember Your Life Plan is for beginners, really. Gives you a grounding in numerology, and it's sort of the level where people would do my foundations of numerology practitioner on Udemy. So that is my first beginner book, and it's just for newbies. This one is for people that are more intermediate. It provides a deeper analysis of the lessons and challenges of your life path and birthday energies, a concise list of your priority and secondary life path tasks, and it gives you a deeper understanding, and it's longer and more detailed analysis for potential numerology readers. And then Remember Your Talents, again, it's an intermediate level course, and it provides an analysis of the lessons of your life path with your talent number, with your expression number. So it shows how good you're going to be at achieving the lessons of your life path and birthday number. Again, a lesson by lesson comparison of your talents to see how easy or difficult each task in your life purpose will be. And again, it's longer and more detailed, and it's more for numerology readers that have a good grounding. And if you have a good grounding, you might want to take my master practitioner for readers on numerology if you prefer audio visual, or you'd like to do both. Remember Your Motivations is due out soon. I'm working frantically to try and get this third intermediate book of the trilogy out there for you, and I hope to do that soon. So and don't forget, if you want a reading from me one-to-one over Zoom, just send me an email. You might want an ongoing one-to-one service, in which case you might want to join my channel on YouTube. And if you live in the UK or you're visiting soon, I do shows all over Oxfordshire and Buckinghamshire and Berkshire sometimes, with Dear Spirit events. So come to one of our events for a personal reading, or just say hello and purchase one of my books. It's completely up to you. So these are my 3 books, and I hope you've enjoyed my video today, and get looking on Amazon, because I tell you what, to find them quickly, put my name in, Katie Ewers, KATIEYOUERS, and then my books come up straight away for you to have a look at. So I hope you enjoy my books, and I hope you've enjoyed my video today. See you soon.